Hey Schuyler, how's it going, man?
It's going okay. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, no problem. For everybody that's joining, Schuyler Dietz is with United Dwelling, and this has been a huge topic of conversation with a lot of the investors. So I thought I'd have you on and just kind of pick your brain a little bit about, the ADU space and what you guys are up to, and yeah, and just kind of get your feedback.
Sounds good. Yeah. So my company is called United Dwelling. We're primarily an ADU provider in Los Angeles. We build roughly 20 ADUs a month in LA, and we have three different product lines. So we have three different customer bases. The first customer base are homeowners who own a home in Los Angeles. They look to us for providing them and building an ADU in the backyard of their home. We are the design build firm, and if they want, they can hire us to manage the home. That's the first part of the business. The second part of the business is working with existing multifamily property owners around LA, and they hire us to build ADUs in the backyards of their multifamily projects. So that traditionally looks like a 2 to 4 unit duplex through fourplex built in the 1930s through 60s. Usually those have a large enough backyard with either a detached garage or just open space that we can then leverage the multifamily ADU rules and add 2 detached ADUs to their projects. So that's great for them because it turns their 2-plex into a 4-plex or their 4-plex into a 6-unit development, significantly increasing cash flows and adding value to their properties. And then the last product line we offer is what we call ground up development, where we work with an investor and purchase a development site in Los Angeles. Those are anything from single family homes on R1 parcels to small multifamily, 3 to 4 unit base density developments, and turn them into a larger bungalow court style neighborhood. So with the recent passage of Senate Bill 9, that allows us to build a duplex on any single family zoned lot. So we can tear down a single family home on a single family zoned lot and build a duplex. And then once we have that duplex built, we can then file for permits under the multifamily ADU rules and add 2 detached ADUs. So what that means is we can take a 1-unit development and turn it into a 4-unit development by building in 2 phases, leveraging our modular units that we build with our factory partners in Northern California and in Riverside County.
Very cool. So in that case, are you, well, I guess to back up a bit, when you have a single family, if it sounds like it makes more sense, if you're just trying to purely maximize the unit count on a property, you'd want to scrape the existing and put the duplex first and then do a phase 2. And I guess where I was going with this, that's more of a statement. The question would be, do you have clients that'll leave that single family, maybe to renovate that and then just can they add a single, or they can add a separate duplex?
They can only add a second unit on an SB9 lot. So if they have a lot that's large enough and they have an existing single family home, they are able to add a second unit that turns that property into a duplex, even if they're detached from each other. And then once you do that, then you can add the ADUs. So I actually have not come across a developer who that is their strategy, but in theory it is possible due to SB9's rules. You would need like a 9 or 10,000 square foot lot in order to keep the existing home, add basically 3 more structures on the property.
I don't want to, steal. Well, actually, I do want to steal some of your secret sauce, but I assume there's a zoning, a lot size. I mean, what are kind of the things that an investor should look for when looking for these kind of properties?
Yeah, so it varies jurisdiction to jurisdiction. We're only building right now in Los Angeles, and we're really just focusing within the city of LA. But I just look for a lot that's generally, wide enough that you can turn the unit sideways and sort of create a private drive of some sort down the property. And then make sure, following the prevailing front setback on a single family property and then side setbacks, you want a lot that basically has enough room to play. Then the interesting part with that is you have to kind of match that versus a neighborhood that would fit well in. For example, if you took a home, a $4 million piece of land in Brentwood, it's not going to make sense to build 4 units on it.
Right.
It makes more sense to build something in a more affordable neighborhood where the value is, instead of in the square footage and bedroom count, it's in the unit count. So that's really because you still have to fall under the same FAR requirements on the lot. So you can't put, 4 2,500 square foot 4-bedroom units on a single family lot. They generally have to stay, small enough that what you're not basically burdening the lot with structures. So you have to look carefully at the neighborhood. Also, obviously, like with small lot subdivisions, a corner lot and an alley lot makes it a lot easier for circulation. So that's also something that I look for in my developments.
Yeah, that
So,
seems
yeah.
like a big one for access and just having flexibility with, ingress, egress. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, do you mind, I've done a little bit of research on SB9, don't know it that well. Do you mind just kind of sharing the, kind of the nuggets inside of the SB9
Yeah.
regulation?
I already went over the largest one, which is allowing to build a duplex on a single family home. That is what I actually think is the larger opportunity. But there's also another portion of the bill that allows an existing homeowner to sell a portion of their property to somebody else and allows that second person to build a second dwelling unit on that kind of new home site. So it allows you to subdivide a single family home zoned lot. So there's a few reasons why that's good. Clearly this podcast is directed towards more real estate investors than homeowners, but the reason why that's a great opportunity is if you're, 5 or 10 years on either side of retirement and you've seen an immense appreciation in the value of your home and you want to capture some of that value, traditionally the only way to capture that value is by selling the home. But when you sell a home in your neighborhood to capture value, you can't just buy another home in the neighborhood because then that defeats the purpose.
Right.
So what splitting the lot allows you to do is sell the back portion of your lot for some amount of money, obviously depending on where it is, and then capture the value of that. Most people don't use all of their backyard, or most people have a large, if you own a single family home, you have a large enough front yard. If you reconfigure it, you can make it a pretty private space. And that's a really great way to capture some value.
I love it. No,
So,
that's great.
Yeah, but to be clear with that, the interesting one is you cannot do a lot split if the property has been rented any time in the last 5 years. So if you currently have a single family rental, it doesn't work. And then it also, if you do a lot split, if you're, let's say, planning on moving to a home, you have to sign an affidavit that you're going to occupy the home for at least 3 years.
Okay. And then you have to stay within FAR, but then have the setbacks, do they adjust the setbacks, so you still have setback requirements as well?
You do have setback requirements. It varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but usually it turns to 5 foot side and rear, and then generally more of a fire separation between each buildings. The bigger requirement is that the max lot split amount you're allowed to do is 60-40. You can't do a 50-50 split, and you can't do, but you could in theory do a 70-30 split. So the main home has to still be on 60% of the lot. And in like an infill case with a 7,500 square foot lot, it's likely going to look like, a flag lot and then your main home on a portion of the lot.
Right.
So there are significant limitations, but my company, one of the things we do we identify these parcels and then rate them basically from 1 to 13, 13 being a perfect parcel for this, and 1 is just doesn't work at all. Yeah. What we found in the city of LA is that there's roughly 115,000 eligible parcels for this. So that's a significant, and each of those can at least add one more unit of housing. It's a great opportunity to build more housing.
Absolutely. And then to kind of on the permitting side or the entitlements, what are there any, I guess, are there any gotchas or is there anything that an investor should be aware of when it comes to permitting? And I'm also always, everyone's, curious on timing. I expect it's a much more streamlined process than the typical, permits.
It's kind of interesting because at this point we're at the very beginning of SB9. SB9 has only been in effect since the beginning of 2022. And cities take a long time. When a law is passed with relation to land use, then it's up to the jurisdictions to write an implementation for the law. And that takes a lot of time. So what I generally think in, like when I tell investors, what should I expect with an SB9 lot split? We're not expecting the first lot splits to actually be approved for another 8 months to a year from now. It takes some time. The duplex, just buying a single family home, tearing it down, putting a duplex in its place, that's a much more streamlined process because you don't have to go through a traditional subdivision. Subdivisions take a lot of time and generally are a relatively discretionary process.
Right.
So I like to focus on non-discretionary, just straightforward approvals. And the city of LA has been pretty generous with their interpretation of the duplex part of the SB9 bill.
I know you guys have actually helped them a lot on that front. What is a typical permit, turnaround time?
So it also depends. Right now, for a traditional 2 to 4 unit development in the city of LA, the average permit permit timeline from submittal until RTI is right around 320 days. At the end of the month, every month, LADDS sends my entitlements team a average timeline and a breakdown of number of units approved and stuff like that. And it's 320 days. And what's interesting is I can only speak to United Dwelling. We're modular. So that dramatically simplifies our entitlements process because when we're submitting to the city, we already have state approved plans for our units. And then we can just place them on, we basically submit a foundation only site plan and are able to place the units onto a site that we're building. And we're expecting, so the interesting part is since all of our projects look relatively the same, the first 5 projects I've submitted have took roughly 320 days, right around average. I'm now just about to actually at the end of this week submit my 3rd wave of developments. And we're expecting that number to go down to about 160 to 190 days instead of 320. Okay. So the first phase took just as long as every other ground up development, 320 days. The second phase we're at about 220, on track for right about 220. And we're shortening the timeline still in this next kind of tranche of developments.
And then is it different if you're just putting a single ADU in the back, if you're just dropping one in?
Very, very much so. So an ADU statewide is dramatically simpler to get a permit for, but they also vary widely from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Yeah. So to give an example, I actually, my company, we just got our first, I can only speak to LA. I know your audience obviously is a lot wider than LA. Yeah. But our LA, for the city of LA permit timelines from the time we submit until RTI is about 45 days for ADUs, and that's everything ready to go. We got our Inglewood timeline. The first permits we got approved in Inglewood took 11 months. Even though state law says it needs to be done in 60 days. Yeah. These are still new enough that different cities have different ways of doing it. And then Burbank, I think got our first ADU, and that one took more like 8 months. Okay. So it varies jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And then there's places like the city of Culver City, which you can get an over-the-counter permit, and it's a 1-day permitting process. So it's just it varies. And different cities, there are cities in Northern California that make it really simple. And then there are cities that make it really difficult. The famous one is the Woodside, saying, they're a mountain lion refuge and we will not allow construction of any new units. That's an extreme. Luckily, that was shot down, but different cities have different implementations.
Right. No, and that's one of the things that knowing that is huge for people that are looking for value add real estate investors looking for that kind of product. I mean, it's night and day. It's and it could be the next city over takes months and months versus weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
So the let's see, where was I going there? I guess that kind of ties into some of the benefits of working with you guys. I mean, obviously, you guys know what you're doing. You're able to, get permits quickly. What's a typical build timeline look like?
Build timeline from start to finish on our ADUs right now are averaging about 45 days. So since our ADUs are modular and we use a couple of proprietary construction methods that we developed in order to increase the speed in which we build and by definition lower the cost. But it's really, we're averaging 45 days for our ADUs. But those are modular. There's also no customization. If we don't really work with frankly, we don't work with a developer or a homeowner if they want a custom ADU. That's not really what we do. Our business is driven on scale and really designed for a rental product more than a custom ADU in, the backyard of a beautiful property.
Right.
That's not
but and that being said, I mean, obviously there's a lot of advantages for the, just having a product and kind of the business you're in. Speed, you guys have gone through the design. I mean, your designs are amazing. So from a, modular perspective, eking out all of the inefficiencies in the typical build and putting that with a really good design, I think is huge. Maybe talk about that, like the actual product type. What you have a couple different options?
Yeah, so we have a few different options. We have a 1-bedroom model that's really very compact. The entire building footprint is 12 by 28. And it's designed, really for a single person or perhaps a couple. All of our units meet Title 24 net zero energy, net zero carbon, which also means that the utility bills for our units are very, very low. Average electric utility in our units are less than $20 a month because all of our units have solar. So that's the 1-bedroom. Then we have a 2-bedroom model, which is close to 700 square feet. It has a front deck and a back deck. Also, meets Title 24. That one's really designed for either a roommate pair or a small family. There's really nice features like 10.5-foot ceilings and a full kitchen, washer, dryer. And the biggest thing is it's fully detached. I mean, they really look much more like small homes than units in an apartment building. And then the third model we have, which we only offer for our ground-up developments, are 2-story duplexes. And inside that duplex, we have a 450 square foot 1-bed, 1-bath unit and about an 1,100 square foot 3-bed, 2-baths. So that's where you have a lot more flexibility because the space is larger. The reason why we offer that is because currently, as the rules are written, ADUs on multifamily properties are limited to 16 feet. So you can't build 2-story ADUs on multifamily properties. With a bill that is in the legislature right now for California, they're talking about increasing that height to 25 feet, but for now it's 16. And then a big disclaimer I have, because oftentimes developers and homeowners want to get the most amount of square footage that they can. The problem with 2-story units is a traditional build has a 15-foot rear setback line on the property,
right?
But ADUs have a 4-foot rear setback line. And when you're 4 feet from the backyard and you have power lines running behind your unit, the power lines have a certain setback requirement as well, that you can't have a structure within 12 feet. Basically, it's like a, pizza, a 12-foot diameter or 24-foot diameter pizza running through the backyard.
Yeah.
That means that it's very, very hard to get a second story on any ADU product unless you
Okay.
don't have power lines.
And are all your designs are pretty modern, right? I mean, is it,
Yeah.
do you have more of a, they're all somewhat kind of flatter roof and
Yeah.
clean modern design. Yeah.
So we keep the flat roof that's actually more related to fire, having fire access on the roofs. There were certain things. This is not what I do in my business, so I can't speak so well to them. But our units are probably more akin to a modern farmhouse, and they're truly designed for a renter, right? They're light. They have 4 sides of exposures, with windows, private outdoor space. The units are very small by design, but they pack a punch where it counts, I'd say.
Right. And then how about cost? And I just wanted to cover like cost and let's start there.
Yeah. So right now, our 1-bedrooms we charge $189,000 for the 1-bedrooms. And the 2-bedrooms, we charge $292,000 for. And those are, per unit. And then the duplex, we charge about $489,000 for it. But the disclaimer that I would say with that is it is much more expensive to build an ADU than it is to build a single family home on the exact same lot, due to the utility requirements and the fact that it's actually quite difficult to get construction materials into the backyard. It means you have to get pretty creative while following code. Right. And then garage conversions are also quite difficult because that's where our business started, was through working with garage conversions. But what we found are the garages that are in backyards were just built 70 years ago, designed to be garages. They weren't designed to be houses. So they don't have footings, they don't have shear walls. You need to do a ton of retrofitting to the structure in order to make it livable. And then you ultimately don't end up with a very nice product. You end up with a garage, that has its own flaws.
Yeah.
So a garage conversion for about a 400 square foot garage conversion, I would say on the low end, you're at about 115,000 for it. And then for obviously, if it's larger or multiple units, it can go up dramatically. But what it comes down to, a garage conversion isn't nearly the same product as a ground up structure. And that's coming from us, which we started doing garage conversions and decided to abandon it because we found that tenants weren't so thrilled with them. We found that homeowners and property owners were shocked at how expensive it got really quickly if you wanted to do it legally, right? Because traditional, ADUs, unpermitted rec rooms, whatever you want to call it, in backyards didn't have at all the same requirement. And we've even seen cases where we've had someone who has a fully plumbed, unpermitted rec room, and they end up tearing it down and build a modular structure in its place because the requirements are so dramatically different.
Right.
So
yeah, you kind of play the whole, do it legal, do it right or not.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're doing it right, there's just, you just end up almost scraping it and rebuilding.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have any data with your investor clients, just kind of what kind of returns to expect?
Yeah,
I know it's probably all over the map, but
yeah, it is all over the map. What's interesting about me and United Dwelling, like our company, is it costs us the same to build in the most expensive neighborhood and the cheapest neighborhood. That's basically pretty much the same for everyone besides finishes. So for example, our 2-bedroom units, we have 670 square foot 2-bedroom units in LA that are renting for $4,000 a month. Right. And because they're in great locations, they're on corner lots, the other part of the property is very nice. So you have that. And then on the other end, we have more affordable units that are in South LA, the exact same unit, and they rent for between $2,500 and $2,750 a month. And to put it in perspective, just for not LA listeners, Section 8 housing vouchers in LA are about $2,450 a month for a 2-bedroom unit. So we, on the low end, we're slightly higher than Section 8 rental vouchers. And on the high end, we're, $4,000 a month is definitely a luxury product.
Right.
So
if
and then return, and then if I can speak to return, I mean, our units are $292,000 to build, and that's all inclusive. So at $4,000 a month, your marginal cap rate, I don't have a calculator in front of me, but your marginal cap rate is probably going to be north of 15% at $4,000 a month. And at $2,500 a month, I don't know, Rod, are you calculating this? Because I don't know, but it's probably somewhere between 9 and 12%. It's still significant, but there's not really a scenario where adding an ADU to an investment property does not make financial sense, because it's just there's no way.
Well, in every major MSA these days, I mean, the rents are pretty off the charts. So it's I mean, obviously that's why, between the regulations changing and the fact that, you can have one on your property. I mean, the big benefit I see, just because I see so many people struggle with this, especially non-construction savvy investors, is just how much time and how much money they just throw away, going through this process, because they don't do it every day. I definitely we have a lot of ground up developers and investors, and then obviously fix and flippers is kind of the bulk of the audience. And so, they have their construction resources, but you also, I just, from my perspective, you're also looking at, from a time perspective, how quickly, if you're doing a cosmetic, renovation, and you can have one of these in, whatever it is, 45, 60, even 90 days, versus building a whole nother unit. I think there's some advantages there.
Absolutely.
Some benefits to that. Anything else we should know about this whole, the ADU market? Anything else? I mean, I tried to cover your benefits. If I'm missing something, feel free to.
No, and I don't even necessarily just want to speak to United Dwelling's benefit, right? United Dwelling was started to solve an affordable housing problem. It's the largest social problem, in my opinion, facing California. So more ADUs is more units, available for rent. So whether you choose to work with a modular supplier and builder like United Dwelling or go the traditional route, it ultimately significantly increases the value of your property and provides another unit of housing on your site. So being someone, who's really pro housing, whether you choose to use us or whether you choose to do it yourself, it still has benefits for the homeowner and property owner as it does for, the neighborhood itself. So that's really what my biggest push would be.
Absolutely. No, and I also been thinking about this from a market, whatever we're going through right now, market transition, some markets we're seeing kind of, things either settling down or even a correction a bit. Just things aren't moving like they were. And so I think kind of a plan B for a lot of folks is, maybe they're thinking of selling and now they're going to keep it. And if you keep it, why not maximize the income? And this is, I think the ADUs are obviously they're very popular, especially in California, but I think across the country, just everyone's looking at ways to maximize cash flow on anything they're going to hold. And to me, this seems like a no-brainer. Like you said, whether you're doing it through a modular or even just, building it yourself. So I think that's it, Schuyler. Thanks for the time, man. I appreciate you jumping on.
Happy to.
I don't know if I'm missing anything I should be asking you, but that was a great, summary of what you guys do and the advantages of incorporating ADUs.
Yeah, well, I certainly appreciate you having me on. Again, my company is called United Dwelling, or accessible at uniteddwelling.com. You can kind of see our units, our finished product, kind of see what we offer in general. And thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. You guys, I would definitely go and check out the website and look at some of the designs. I mean, even just to give you an idea of what is available. I mean, they're really cool looking. I mean, I've done enough, building in my time and design and whatnot. You guys do a really good product.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon.
All right. See ya.